Sorry about that. For those of you who don't know, I'm using my camera to record this conversation, and it's not, I'm using like travel technology known to man. As unfortunately, because as Dom can testify, this isn't the best technology we're using to record these conversations. But so apologies for that. Dom was asking me about who would I like, and Moutinho. There's a post saying which player would you want, and then they're realistic. I think Moutinho, is he 26 or 27? I don't know what his exact age, but do you feel that would you feel that, say, there's resale value in Moutinho?
I'll be honest, I think for what he would potentially bring, I'm one of these guys that's less fussed about, resale value. I honestly think with financially, yes, we do need to not be idiots about this thing and not sign, 35-year-old players on crazy inflated wages and a massive transfer fee. But someone like, I don't know how old he is as well, I think he is around that sort of 26, 27 kind of age. So I think he's the ideal age. He could be, coming into that typical prime for someone.
Yeah.
And if there was just one player that I think we would bring, and I actually would want it to be Moutinho.
Again, he's a player I definitely would like to sign. I think as a player, but the qualities he brings, I think he's definitely the strongest of that bunch that we've mentioned. I don't think he's the strongest out of all four of them. I personally think, in terms of realistic, I just think, apart from, say, apparently even the Scott Parker signing was a real fight for Harry to sign Scott Parker, and I'm not saying, obviously, there's obviously a 3 or 4 years age difference, so I'm not saying that we wouldn't get the money back, but Levy's shown that he likes to sign players of between 18 and 22, if that makes any sense, So it's not
True,
it's not realistic yet.
But it changed a bit. There was a time when literally those were the only players he signed under Harry. He didn't bring any sort of really old Paolo Di Canio actually done in the past. But I think it's actually changed a bit where he is prepared to bring in a slightly older player. And if Coutinho was in his 30s, I think Parker was 30 when he joined us, or 29. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Moutinho's, a good few years younger. Yeah. So I don't think he falls into that same category. I think if he could pick him up for decent money, then he should go for it. Chances are he'd probably have to pay slightly over the odds if it's in January. But if it's only, a few million, if he's just talking about the odd million, if it's only a few million extra, then fantastic, pick it up. But we know Levy will not go crazy on himself. But Parker picked her up for, really, really cheap for basically his pedigree and the fact that he was, at the time, signed himself as an England international regular.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'll go for Moutinho. I think we've got, I wouldn't say I'm not a young Moutinho, but obviously I know that I've been raving about Tom Carroll. I think he's definitely someone, I think, at 20, he can be a future, I think he's definitely someone I can see in a couple of years' time being in that Spurs midfield. And I think if you want to have that, the young and the old, I think that really works. He's not too, Moutinho's not too old, and I think he's got all that experience, has played under AVB, and I think at the same time it allows us to bring the likes of your younger players through. If you put another 20-year-old or another 19, 21-year-old, it makes it very difficult for the likes of our youngsters in that same position to come through. So I think Moutinho would be my ideal signing. I wouldn't want to go for a striker. The striker, I know some of the guys talk about Remy and those kind of players, but the player I would have gone for would have been Sturridge. I thought Sturridge, can play on the left flank, can play on the on that three that AVB likes to play. He can play on either side of that three as well as through the middle. I thought he's versatile, and at 12 million, that's an absolute bargain. I think, Premiership player.
I think I'm not 100% convinced on Sturridge. I think he's a decent player. It looks like he's going to be leaving Chelsea anyway, but I'm not certain about him. I think, it would be great to have another forward. The fact that sometimes we only play one up front means that do we necessarily need one? But if we have an injury to Defoe or Adebayor, we could be in trouble. I don't know. I like what you say about the versatility of Sturridge, but I'm not 100% convinced. I know people like Willian have been discussed. We seem to have been linked with Leandro Diamo for, or however you pronounce his surname, I'm not certain.
Damiao.
And he's Damiao. Thank you, Shoot. He seems to be getting, building himself a much bigger profile. And I've only seen him on YouTube, but he looks pretty impressive to me. So I'd like to maybe bring him in at some point. I don't know if that one's off.
I remember seeing him against Scotland, and I thought there's some, and obviously, it's Scotland, so you don't think, and it's only a friendly, but I saw some qualities in him. I thought this is a guy that can really definitely lead the line. He wasn't very good back to goal, but he had some good qualities. He was strong in the air, very much traditional, a typical centre forward, English centre forward. He could hold the ball up pretty well, but he wasn't very good at, say, back to goal. But I think he's improved from what the games I've seen. He's definitely improved that ability. And I think he does fit our economic model. And I think if we were to get the Champions League, that is someone that I can see Levy really looking to push for, because I still don't think there's a real coherent transfer policy, because you've got the players that Levy's looking to push for, and he's advised, these players you should be going for. You've got the players the manager wants to go for, and I don't think we've got that real coherent transfer policy yet. What do you think?
I think a lot of people make quite a lot of who signs the players, who signs the players. We think it would be naive of some people to not think that at least, at a club like Tottenham, any club is run as a business now. And I think it would be naive to think that someone as influential as AVB wouldn't have a significant hand, and that Levy or whoever else may be in as director of football, whoever it is, would bring them in over his head. I know there's been the odd exception. I think Van der Vaart apparently was given as a gift to Harry Redknapp.
Yeah.
Not much about it. I think generally they would be talking. So while someone else might be out there and be sort of leading the line, as it were, it's fairly certain that I think if everyone would have an input, and even if someone else technically signs off the deal, I think it's a matter of putting their heads together. So I don't think it's that big an issue, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think when it works, when you have that kind of balanced committee and everyone's working, they're bouncing each other really well, I think that works. But sometimes when they're very much poles apart, because obviously, I think because if you look in the last two transfer windows under Harry, we were in the Champions League, and last year when we were pushing on for, when we were third and we really could have nailed third. I don't know if it was the Harry tax case or then the England manager thing going on, but we never really backed the manager, all the way.
I think, to be honest, I think the Harry thing is different. I think the things you mentioned, the tax scenario, the tax scenario, the England scenario when it came up, no, that doesn't account for all the transfer that you're referring to. But in the last couple of years, Redknapp wasn't ever going to be around for years and years and years after Levy. I think the difference with AVB is Levy has kind of staked his reputation, as it were, after what happened to Chelsea, and I actually think that he's kind of in this, the AVB project, if you will. So I actually think that, they probably are in this together. It's almost a mutual kind of mission that they're on, as it were.
So I'm thinking about that way. I'm thinking Moutinho is a realistic signing, man. I think he's someone that AVB obviously really likes. He's someone that Levy was willing to spend, I don't know how much it was, X amount on in September, but obviously the third-party issues. My one fear is, could we get him from Porto? Because Porto obviously playing Malaga, and obviously they've been now not allowed to go into the Champions League or any European competition. They've been banned for a season. So is that going to demotivate them? So do Porto think, well, do you know what, we can walk this, because no matter what Porto do, unless they win this, they're not in the competition next year anyway. So I think our Porto going to be more likely or less likely to sell, because it's all about, if a player wants to come, great. If we want to sign him, great. But if the club doesn't want to let him go, unless we pay them that extortion, a real high fee, and re-wrangle and do all that kind of dirty, unsettle the player and all that kind of stuff, then I don't know. I just don't see us signing him. I just think it'll be very, very difficult unless we pay a high fee or we do that, trying to unsettle him and really. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think we know that about the January transfer window. Trying to pry players away from clubs that don't have to sell, you do know that you're likely to have to pay a little bit more. So I think, potentially we may suffer from, that 11th hour, missing out of Moutinho when the money's on the table, and we were that close to signing him, like you said. I think we may have to pay over the odds, but then that's not exclusive to this situation. If the club don't have to sell, they'll drop our bargains. They're right to. So I think, again, it is what it is. January, you're all likely to pay slightly inflated price for a lot of players.
But I think there is a solution, actually, and I think it could be through a player that I've been, apparently, according to Crowspur, whose actually birthday was last week, so happy birthday again, Crow, who I've been apparently lambasting a lot, Tom Huddleston, but I really think that, given a loan move, I think obviously that earns a bit of money. I think he can actually rejuvenate his career a little bit, and actually if we were to sell him, we actually would get a pretty price for him because he's been playing in the Premiership. I think this is his 5th season now, 5th or 6th season. I mean, obviously if you discount last year because of the injuries, he's played at least 5 years in the Premiership. So he's a good Premiership player, and I think obviously there was an issue of getting him on loan because he had the injury and people weren't willing to touch him. But he's shown that he can play games, he can start games for us. He has started games for us. So I think there could be a loan move for him in January, which is a loan fee. I think if he does well on loan, and if he does get a regular run of games, and he can really show what he's capable of, I think if he chooses not to come back to us, because obviously if we sign someone like Moutinho, then his value goes up, and I think it can be funded. So even though we might have to pay a bit extra, I think that shortfall, that overflow. So I don't know what's the opposite of a shortfall, the high fall or something, or the tall fall, but that can be met, I think, if we actually manage to say Hudderston, because for me, Tom Hudderston, I think if you build a team around him, I think you can do well with him. I really do think that you do need to build a team around his talents.
I think Mr. Levy, if he's watching YouShubes, should probably sign you up as a financial advisor. Because I like the thinking. I actually do. If you send him yes, potentially we could get more money. I think, I'll be honest, if we do get Moutinho in, I think Huddlestone's days are numbered. So, yes, we can get some more money from sending him out on loan. I agree with you. He's a proven Premiership player, and he'd be a first-team regular in a lot of other teams. I think he's had long enough for us now to show. I don't think he ever will for that potential that a lot of people thought he did have and would develop into. So I'll be honest, I do think his days are slightly numbered with us anyway.
And because I don't want to do a disservice, but I think there are some players, some exceptional players, but you do need to build your team around them. That's just the way it is. And Ballack at Bayern Munich had great success, didn't do as well at Chelsea because the Bayern Munich team was very much built around playing to his strengths. He was their best player, and they naturally had to play to his best, to his strengths. I don't think we play well to Hudderston's strengths because we just have so many other better players on our team, and I just think it's unfortunate, and I hate to be harsh and ruthless about this because I was really rating the Hud. I just called him the incredible Hud, and I still think he's an incredible player, but he's not the player that is really going to be uprooting trees. Well, I know he's big enough to uproot a tree, but I just don't think he's that kind of player.
He was a bit of a trick sometimes, but I think he is a good player, and I don't want to be mean to him as well. I think he's been a good player for the club over the years. However, you talk about him like he is one of those amazing players that people build a team around. I don't think he's at that level. I don't think he ever will be at that level. Yes, I think he could form the centre of a team at another team, and he could probably be the best player. But as you said, at Spurs, in the last few seasons, being surrounded by the likes of Luka Modric and Van der Vaart and Bale coming on, he's not. He's one of the squad players. So if he stays at Spurs, I'd still be happy. But I don't really see him as more than a squad player for us. But yeah, he could be a Messi or a Maradona for another team. I don't know.
Definitely, I think in what I call the bottom half team. I don't know what you call that. The teams that are not going to be in the Europa League. They're not going to be in the Europa League slots, but they're never going to be in relegation. I think that the clubs. The mid-table clubs. I think he'd be a very good player for them. I think he's someone you can really build. They can really build a team around. And I think if the right team was able to come in and really play to his strengths, then I think he'd be an excellent player for them. I definitely think he's definitely very much a luxury player because he won't be able to get about the pitch much, but he can strike the ball. He can definitely pass the ball, and I think he's a player that, unfortunately, the modern game does demand an ability of that being able to whiz about, because there are some players who make it look effortless. I mean, look at Berbatov. You don't see him running around all the time for us. He never ran a huge amount for us, but what he did for us was absolutely beautiful at times, absolutely sublime, And I just don't think Huddleston, unfortunately, isn't as a midfielder. As a forward, I think he can get away with it a lot more. As a midfielder, especially a centre midfielder, you're really going to struggle to have a few good moments, get away with that.
I agree. He's not mobile enough, and Berbatov, I don't think, you could direct him partly for the reasons that you said. Berbatov, a striker, he's just insanely skillful, and he had those bits of magic, like you say. We've had these Thunderbolts from shown over the years, and some amazing passing. But I don't think he's quite on the same level, and yet his lack of mobility and pace of getting up and down the pitch, unfortunately, in midfield, is going to show him up a bit.
I must admit, the Countess von Count is going to be absolutely horrified that I compared, Tom Hudson to her beloved Dimitar Berbatov. But I'm sorry, Lex. There was a reason why I went for that. So yeah. Anyway, in terms of your team tomorrow, who would you pick for? Not tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, Boxing Day against Aston Villa. What team would you go with?
I think I would stick with basically the team we've been having out. There are question marks over Walker, but I think we mentioned this last time. For me, barring injuries or suspensions, the team almost picks itself. I would still have Parker on the bench, ready to come kind of back, and it's great to see him return. But I think we need to ease him back into it. We're playing away from home, so I suspect we will play one up front. And again, I think that has to be Defoe at the moment. Yeah, so as I said, the rest of the team, assuming Bale is fit still, pretty much picks itself. I'm hoping. Apparently, there's rumours that Benny could be fit for the game. Benny could be fit to start. So I'm hoping if that is true, then I definitely would start with Benny at left back. And I actually would drop Walker and actually play Carl Norton, because there had been moments where he has. I thought he turned it around. He played pretty well against Swansea, but then that pass against Stoke, it was a very lazy pass as well. He had all the time in the world to pass, and it's a very, very dangerous pass. And I think he needs to be dropped for his own good, if that makes any sense. I completely agree. And if Benny is back, and I have heard potentially he might be, I wouldn't have him as first choice left back, but I think he's done a fantastic job in that position when he played there as well. But I think we signed him as a centre back. So if Benny is back, then yes, have him out on the left. I'm saying it's like Kyle Norton has been amazing when he's filled in at left back on it. So it might work out well for both of them, dropping one of the Kyle, the bench, and having the other one, Norton, have a go at right back. See how he does there in supposedly best position. Yeah, and I think
hopefully Corker. Obviously Benteke's a strong centre forward, and I think after we saw what Drogba did to Gallas, obviously the devastating effect in the FA Cup earlier this year, and we saw what Lukaku did the same thing as well. And I think I'd actually have Corker and Vertonghen in that centre back pairing, and I know we did drop him, and I'd hate to drop Gallas, but I think we're playing against Sunderland as well, and playing him twice in 1 week, especially in the midweek and the Premier League as well. I think Gallas is 35. There's only so many times you can really play him, like game after game after game. So I'd actually go with Corker and Vertonghen in the middle. I actually go with 3. I'd go with Dembele, Sandro, and Sigurdsson, and front 3 Bale, Azar, and JD. But yeah, I think hopefully we'll get a result. Hopefully, and then we'll see how. If we do well, hopefully we can get a win, and then hopefully Sunderland, another big game, and then onwards and upwards. Anyway, Dom, it's been fantastic talking to you about Spurs. It's always fantastic talking to you about anything, but talking to you about Spurs, it's just the cherry on the cake. And
as I said, as always, a pleasure. May I just wish you and all yours and everyone that watches YouShubes a very Merry Christmas for me.
And on that bombshell, I'd like to say thank you very much to Dom. Please click on the ads if they do appear from Google and YouTube. Please share it on your Facebook, your Twitters. As Dom found out, if you share it on Facebook, you get some interesting reactions. And yeah, definitely inbox me on YouTube. I'll tweet me as well. And it's always been great chatting to you guys, chatting Spurs. And for those of you who don't know who Cliff Jones is, or Terry Dyson, who signed the book, here is a picture, an autographed picture they've made out to me. And they are the most incredibly charming people. Oh, they are just so nice. And for those younger viewers, especially one of my friends, Kevin G, is actually an American fan of Spurs, the best way I can describe Cliff Jones is he was the Gareth Bale of the 60s, basically. What would you say, Dom?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen very much of him play himself, but from what you've said, meeting them would have been amazing. Playing in that era and hearing the guys that they played with as well. I would say, that's probably a fine compliment to Bale from what I have heard. But yeah, I can't claim to be an expert on that era, I'm afraid.
I'm
getting older, and I'm a day older tomorrow, but I'm not quite that old.
Oh, you wouldn't look. You know, I although I just realised how that came out, but I just thought because you got that book, and I thought you were like plowing through that. You went to the glory days, and that's why I thought you were like beavering away for that. But that's why I thought you might have known that about Cliff Jones.
Don't get me wrong. I do, and I know of it, and from what I understand, yeah, the similarities or the comparison. Is probably sound, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reading the aforementioned book. Yeah, I've seen a load of stuff, obviously old footage, way before the year of my birth, but I'm quite clued up as I should be, so hopefully this book might get me up there.
Yeah, so therefore, if you want to be clued up on your Spurs history and the basically greatest matches, read the greatest matches by Mike Donovan with a forward by the great Cliff Jones.
I believe there's even a lovely little message in here for me, two of them, which is fantastic.
And honestly, they all. Do you know what? I've never. I think I spoke to Dom about it. So I met some of the UFC guys, and some of them were absolutely, were absolutely wonderful. Some were absolutely horrible, kind of thing. And I remember, and I mentioned Vanderlei Silva, who's a huge MMA fighter, and actually a huge star, and he just seemed more happy to see me than I was him. And honestly, I can say the same about Cliff Jones and Terry Dyson. They seemed happier to meet me, just a plain old fan, than I was to see them. I was just bloody on cloud nine. I think to meet players that make you feel that special, it's just, if that's what they were like with their attitudes as fans, and if they translate onto the pitch, no wonder we did the double and and played some of the best football this country's ever seen.
Well, you never know. Perhaps they're fans of YouShubes. Perhaps they're subscribers. So.
Do you know what? I'm very much doubt it, but hopefully this, if anyone knows Cliff Jones or Terry Dyson, definitely send them this gift send them the gift of YouShubes, please.
I'm sure
it's really good to gift of YouShubes. It sounds Christmas. So anyway, go and wrap this one up. Thank you so much again, Dom, and as always, come on, you Spurs!
Come on, you Spurs, and Merry Christmas.